everyone, welcome back to my channel, Learn with Riyaa. Today, we are going to be learning about sleep, a very fascinating topic. So if you remember from my last video about preventive health, we learned about the 4 pillars of health, which include sleep, nutrition, exercise, and peace. All 4 are very vital to leading a well-rounded life. But today we are going to be talking about just sleep. I'm going to be telling you guys about the physiology of sleep, the negative effects of sleep deprivation, and how we can all get more sleep. So when talking about the physiology of sleep, right now, I'm just going to give a very basic overview of the stages of sleep. In the next few slides, I will be going into a lot more detail. So the first big stage is non-REM. So REM stands for rapid eye movement. The second stage is REM, just rapid eye movement. And under non-REM, we have 4 sub-stages, which are called stages 1, 2, 3, and 4. So now I'm going to go into more detail, starting with the non-REM part, stage 1. So in stage 1, what happens is that we are finally starting to fall asleep. So you lie in bed with your eyes closed. So when we're awake, our neurons are really excited. They are moving fast. But when we get into our beds, turn off our lights and close our eyes, our neurons start to move even more rhythmically and they start to move even more evenly. So this indicates that our brain is turning inwards. At the same time, our sensory receptors are muffled. So we don't pay attention to all of the sounds around us, the smells around us, and we finally fall asleep. This stage, again, which is called stage 1, lasts for only 5 minutes. Then stage 2 begins, and stage 2 lasts for about 50 minutes. In this stage, a series of electrical sparks come out of our cerebral cortex, and these are called spindles. These spindles are very important because they help us to store a lot of things that have happened throughout our day. So literally, our spindles can make us even more intellectual because our brain makes so many more connections when we're asleep than it can make when awake. So this is what people mean when they say, oh, why don't you just sleep on something and then make a decision? It's because when you wake up, you might have more clarity on a certain issue or situation because your brain has had time to process it while it was asleep. So this is why stage 2 is so important. Then there's stages 3 and 4. Stages 3 and 4 last for about 30 minutes and we enter a deep coma-like sleep. This sleep is so essential to our brains. It's as essential to our brains as food is to our bodies. It is in these stages that our cells recuperate and we produce growth hormones, which service our bones and muscles. This is really important because these bones and muscles will help us for the rest of our lives with movement. So these growth hormones, the production of them is very important. So these are the 4 stages of the non-REM part of the sleep. So now let's move on to the second part, the second big stage, which is the REM part of sleep, which again stands for rapid eye movement. So there are different aspects which I will be explaining about the REM part of sleep. So when we are in REM sleep, scholars say that we literally go mad, and this is because we are dreaming. At the same time, our heart rate increases. A very important part of the REM part of sleep is that we store a lot of our memory, a lot of our experiences, a lot of our situations. This is a long-term memory storage. Without sleeping, without going through the REM phase, we wouldn't remember a lot of what we remember about our childhood, about our family members, about a lot of things, really. At the same time, our whole body is immobilized. So we just don't move. But under our closed eyelids, our eyes will actually move from side to side. So this is why we call this stage rapid eye movement. So both of these main stages, non-REM and the REM part of sleep, last for about 3 to 4 hours. After the REM part of sleep has ended, this means that one cycle is over. And what will happen usually is that this doesn't happen all the time, but people usually wake up. Now, we don't actually remember this. We don't actually notice ourselves waking up, but it's so fast and then we fall right back asleep. And then our second cycle will start again, which lasts for another 3 to 4 hours. This is why children usually sleep for 10 hours, because they usually enter their third cycle of going through the non-REM and the REM part of sleep. So this is just an interesting fact that I thought you guys should know. So now that we have gone through the physiology of sleep, let's go through the effects of sleep deprivation, which means lack of sleep. So we all know what the lymphatic system is, right? So it takes out the waste out of our body. So there was a common misconception for years that our brain doesn't have any system that takes out any waste because there is no waste in our brain. But that isn't true. Our brain does have toxic waste that accumulates, and one of them is called amyloids. This is a picture of an amyloid. And what happens is that something called glial cells actually take out this toxic waste. This is why it's called the glymphatic system. There's a G in front, which means glial cells. A lot of us think that neurons are the most important part of our nervous system, and they are a vital part. But another very important part of our nervous system is glial cells, because when we're asleep, what actually happens is that these neurons shrink and the glial cells grow significantly bigger. And there's usually a rocking motion in these glial cells, which help them to take out these toxic waste, such as amyloids. So now going back to these amyloids accumulate during the day and are disposed of at night. So what happens if there's sleep deprivation? What happens if someone is constantly experiencing no sleep? Well, then these amyloids are just going to keep accumulating in our brain, right? There's not going to be any disposal because there's no sleep, so the glial cells are not allowed to work. This can result in a lot of neurodegenerative diseases, one of which is Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's disease has many causes, sleep deprivation just being one of them. Okay, so moving on. Another negative effect of sleep deprivation is on our appetite. So we have hormones which regulate appetite and hunger, one of them being leptin. So leptin is called a satiety hormone, and it's good because it suppresses appetite and actually encourages us to expend our energy. So it encourages us to engage in physical activity. But when there's lack of sleep, the amount of the hormone leptin produces significantly decreases, and the amount of the hormone ghrelin produced increases. Now, ghrelin is commonly called a hunger hormone, and it's not that great because it really increases feelings of appetite and hunger, which can then result in weight gain, and that results in obesity. So obesity is another effect of sleep deprivation. Again, obesity can happen because of many things. There are many factors, sleep deprivation just being one of them. Yet another effect of sleep deprivation is diabetes. Diabetes can be caused for many reasons. There's a lot of insulin resistance, but sleep deprivation is just one of those many reasons. So before I get into what diabetes is and how sleep deprivation can affect diabetes and result in diabetes, let's go over one of the main hormones in this process, insulin. So I have this image up here. How does insulin work? Well, before we get started on insulin specifically, there's things called receptors on cells, and these receptors actually take signaling molecules, and the signaling molecules fit perfectly into these receptors. It's kind of a lock and key fit. So if you think about it, it's like a key goes into a specific lock and it's only that one key. So like that, only a specific group of molecules or hormones can go on specific receptors because they have those specific shapes. So for insulin, there's a specific insulin receptor. And once these signaling molecules go onto the specific receptor, a specific signal is sent for a specific job. So the insulin goes onto the insulin receptor and a signal is sent. The signal actually opens glucose channels. So these glucose channels, once they're open, they allow glucose to enter the cell. So when we eat food, a lot of glucose is produced, and there can be an accumulation of glucose in our bloodstream. So our pancreas will release insulin into the bloodstream so that our cells can open their glucose channels, and so that glucose can go in. And this can be beneficial because then the glucose can be converted to energy by the mitochondria, which can later be used. Now that we know how insulin works, what is diabetes? So here's an image on type 2 diabetes. So like I said, the stomach changes food into glucose, right? And glucose then enters the bloodstream, and then the pancreas makes insulin, which goes into the bloodstream. But here, what is happening is that there's some malfunction where the insulin is not able to help the glucose go into the cells. So if the glucose isn't able to go into cells, there's glucose buildup in the blood vessels, which then results in high glucose levels and diabetes. So how does sleep deprivation play a role into this? So when there's sleep deprivation, what happens is that less insulin is produced. So now if less insulin is produced by the pancreas, there's a lot more accumulation of glucose in our bloodstream, which then will lead to diabetes. So along with all of this, another effect of sleep deprivation is a compromised immune system. This is just one of the many causes for a compromised immune system. But so basically what is happening is that our immune system produces something called cytokinase, or in this picture, they just say cytokine. And cytokine are important because many different types of cells or immune cells depend on the cytokine. And from this image, you can see lymphocytes, macrophages, granulocytes, mast cells, fibroblasts, endothelial cells. And it's not necessary that you know what each of these immune cells do, but basically what you should know is that these immune cells work to fight off pathogens and infectious bacteria and helps to strengthen our immune system. So what happens when we don't sleep enough? What happens when we have sleep deprivation? Well, when we sleep, the amount of cytokinase produced increases. So when we don't sleep, less cytokinase is produced, which then results in a vulnerable immune system. When there's a vulnerable immune system, that means we are overall weaker. And this is dangerous, especially now when there's COVID, right? We need to have a strengthened immune system. We need to have a stronger immune system. So during this time, especially, sleep is so important so that our body produces more cytokinase and so that our immune system is more protected. So now that we have discussed all the negative effects of sleep deprivation, you might be wondering, well, what can I even do to get more sleep? Well, there are ways to get more sleep, and there's such simple ways that you can integrate into your life every single day, into your day-to-day activities. So one simple way is to maybe watch less TV or stop watching TV at least 30 minutes to an hour before bedtime. Our body actually produces a hormone called melatonin. Melatonin helps us fall asleep. But when we watch TV immediately before going to sleep, this can actually decrease the levels of melatonin produced. So it's harder for us to fall asleep. Another way we can get more sleep is physical activity, exercise, because then we fall asleep easier because, we're more tired. We can avoid late night dinners and we can dim our lights. So dimming our lights will help our neurons, be less excited, kind of go rhythmically with each other, turning our brains inwards and putting us to sleep. And there's also meditation and, well, like this image says, to choose happy. This has a lot to do with well-being and peace. Don't stress out too much, kind of don't worry about things too much. Try not to go to bed stressing out about anything, solve all your problems. And, just remember everything that is going to be okay. Because if you're focusing or stressing out about this one thing, it's really hard to kind of calm down and go to sleep. So just try to remain positive at all times. So with all of this information from the National Sleep Foundation, they recommend a solid 7 to 9 hours of sleep every night. So if you're not getting these 7 to 9 hours of sleep, try to implement some of the strategies that I've mentioned and try to kind of alter or like change your day-to-day life or change your schedule a little bit so that you do get these vital 7 to 9 hours of sleep, because they're important to maintaining a very healthy lifestyle. So this is all there is about sleep for now. This is a very, basic introduction to it, but I hope you guys learned a lot, and I hope you guys integrate some of the things that I've said into your life so you get your 7 to 9 hours of sleep. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please subscribe, give a like, and comment any questions you have, and please comment for like any sort of videos that you would like to see in the future. Thank you so much, and I will see you guys next time to learn something else. Bye.